I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. If we've learned anything about school shootings, it's that seconds matter. The recent tragedy in Uvalde, Texas served as a vivid example, which makes this next story so important. Investigative reporter Kyla Boshi found on 3 separate occasions police were slow to respond or did not respond at all after reports of gun incidents near Portland High School.
Friday, September 16th, 2:57 p.m. A vice principal at Franklin High School in Southeast Portland calls 911 for help.
Don't let them in.
911, what is the address to your emergency?
Yeah, this is Franklin High School. It is 5405 Southeast Woodward Street. We need police presence immediately at 56 and Woodward Street.
Okay, Woodward. Okay. And then what's going on there?
There's been like some gang violence activity. There have been guns driving, or cars with guns in the car driving by, and there's something happening. And I've been called radio multiple times for please get police presence.
The call is dispatched as a priority 1, typically an emergency call that's in progress and life-threatening. Yet despite the urgent nature, records show Portland police didn't arrive on scene at Franklin High School until 4:17 p.m., roughly 1 hour and 20 minutes after the initial 911 call. A KGW investigation found police were slow to respond or didn't respond at all to at least 3 separate incidents involving guns spotted near the Portland High School in mid-September.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
Franklin High School.
Okay, what's happening at the Franklin High School?
A student just reported me that a car pulled up on them and came out, and 2 students pulled out, reaching for what they thought were weapons. That happened about 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
And so I have students out and about. We're on lunch right now, and so I needed to report that right away.
In another case, earlier in the day on September 16th, emergency dispatchers reassured a vice principal that help was on the way.
Okay, all right, we'll have someone meet you there.
Okay, can you meet me at Franklin?
Yes, meet you at Franklin.
Out the front, thank you.
Instead, emergency dispatch logs suggest a police officer never showed up at the high school. Instead, police left a voicemail and the call was cleared.
I mean, when you look at the responses that you're getting, I think we have a gap there. I mean, it's pretty evident.
Rick Puente, vice president of the Oregon School Resource Officers Association, admits seconds matter when responding to incidents on or near campus. In June of 2020, in the wake of George Floyd's murder, Portland discontinued the presence of armed police officers in Portland public schools, a move activists had demanded for years.
I'm removing school resource officers, otherwise known as SROs, from all of our schools in our districts here in the city of Portland.
When you're not filling those gaps, you remove a school resource officer or the program and you leave that gap. I always look at it, it's like you get a flat tire, so it's a system that needs to be repaired or maybe addressed. And instead of repairing it, you remove it and keep going down the street on 3 wheels. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
The sluggish response to gun incidents near Franklin High School help illustrate a citywide problem. Portland police response times are averaging more than 15 minutes for high-priority calls. That's much slower than years past. Police blame a critical staffing shortage, but suggest that recent hires may help.
We're going to try to get to every call we can.
Portland police didn't elaborate on why it took so long to respond to gun incidents at Franklin. Earlier in the week, Chief Chuck Lavelle spoke broadly about response times.
We want to answer those calls. We'll do our best to answer them. And we understand that even if it's not a homicide or a shooting, having your stuff stolen, having your home violated by an intruder is traumatic. And we want to do our best to address those with the resources we have.
In the meantime,
911, what is the address of your emergency?
It's Franklin High School.
School officials are left waiting after serious threats.
We got a report this morning that there was a student at Beckman Park showing off a gun.
Okay.
And he made a threat that he was going to shoot another student.
After this 911 call on September 19th, a police officer did arrive at Franklin High School, although 25 minutes later.
Kyle joins me now. Wow, what a powerful report, and I'm sure a lot of parents are going to be very concerned about this. What came from those incidents at Franklin? Did police explain why it took so long?
Yeah, first and foremost, no shots were fired as far as we can tell, and no injuries. As for the police response to this, we really wanted to know why it took police so long to get to Franklin in all three of those incidents. So we reached out to them. In fact, the story was supposed to air last night, but we decided to hold off a little bit to give police a little longer. A spokesperson said he was researching, but ultimately never got back to us.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. What does PPS have to say about this?
So we reached out to Portland Public to see if they had any response, along with the principal of Franklin, suggesting maybe they had something to say about the sluggish response. They didn't provide any kind of comment.
Yeah, not that they're going to say publicly anyway. All right, and what about the recent police hires? Is that going to help?
Yeah, so as you recall, Portland Police celebrated earlier this month hiring 20 new officers. That was a big step forward, but I just looked at the numbers before I came out here. Sworn staff is just below 800. There are about 92 vacancies among sworn staff, so they've got a long ways to go. Additionally, you think about it, once you hire someone, then you begin the certification, the training process. That takes time as well, so this is going to take quite some time.
Quite the revealing report. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it. We are in the thick of it when it comes to political campaigns. Many are fascinating. Tonight, we're going to take a look at one side of the high-profile congressional race in Washington's District 3. Republican Joe Kent is running against Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez. Both candidates are looking to fill the seat Republican Jamie Herrera Butler has held since 2010. She lost in the August primary. The most recent polling in this race shows Kent with a slight lead, but in an area that's favored Republicans for a decade, it's shaping up to be a real tight race. Next week, we're talking with Gluesenkamp-Perez here on The Story. Tonight, we're going to focus on Joe Kent. He's been endorsed by President Trump and touts himself as an American-first, anti-establishment candidate. Investigative reporter Evan Watson joins us with more on what Kent believes in and how he's evolved as a candidate.
Well, this week we went to one of Joe Kent's town halls in Clark County, and after he finished speaking, he agreed to sit down with us. But it wasn't that easy to talk with him. His campaign had previously denied our interview requests for a recorded interview. They said their policy is to only do live interviews with, quote, left-wing media outlets. That's what they referred to us as. It speaks to part of Kent's campaign playbook, which has galvanized voters on the right edge of the party, but leaves more moderate voters with a choice come November.
Washington's 3rd District, covering Clark County and Southwest Washington, has favored Republicans for the past decade. The district voted for President Trump in the last 2 elections by 7 and 4 points. But in ousting incumbent Jamie Herrera Butler in the primary, voters now have a choice between a working-class Democrat, Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, and Joe Kent, a Trump-endorsed military veteran who aligns himself with the more far-right ideals of his party.
We did much better than I think a lot of people thought we were going to do, and so we're starting to move the Republican caucus. They're at least having to acknowledge that a lot of people out here that they count on for votes, for financial support, that this is where the party's actually at. It's with the Trump America First agenda.
Kent said he entered the race as retribution for Herrera Butler voting to impeach President Trump after the January 6th Capitol riots. He told KGW he believes January 6th feels like an intelligence operation and that defendants are being held as political prisoners. At a Clark County Republican Party town hall, Kent met with voters who praised his ties to President Trump, which includes skepticism of the 2020 election results. Kent said each state's certification and review of the vote hasn't been enough to convince him it was fair. He previously joined a lawsuit in Washington, claiming auditors in his district flipped votes.
I think we always need audits. I won in August. I'm happy. I would be ecstatic if we'd go and audit that. So same thing, I still want an audit of 2020.
However, Kent said he will accept the results of his upcoming election.
Yeah, I accept. Had I lost in August, I'd accept the results, but I still want there to be actual audits and transparency along the way. So when I win in November, I'm confident I'm going to win. I still want there to be an audit.
At his core, Kent emphasizes an America First movement that criticizes current political leaders. He says the COVID-19 vaccine is experimental gene therapy, opposes any vaccination requirements, and wants to defund the FBI.
I think our establishment, Republicans and Democrats, administrative state, that they have not been serving the American people, and I think we need to change that.
He often blames immigration, both illegal and legal through H-1B work visas, saying it harms American workers. At the town hall, he told voters he would focus on obstructing and shutting down the federal government to prevent the passage of future Democratic policies.
So normally, legislators come here and they say, I'm going to pass all these different bills and work across the aisle, all this type of stuff. We're not there right now. We're also going to go after Joe Biden and impeach him and Kamala Harris because, look, at the end of the day,
Kent has gained notoriety on national programs such as Newsmax, Fox News, OAN, and Steve Bannon's War Room this year. Multiple times, he's had to disavow ties to white nationalists or extremists. In March, on a YouTube stream, he distanced himself from the comments of Nick Fuentes, a podcaster who the Anti-Defamation League describes as a white supremacist who has made racist and anti-Semitic comments. Kent had previously tweeted in support of Fuentes and talked to him on a campaign consulting call, but he said he didn't want his endorsement due to his focus on race and religion.
in particular, his comments about like, hey, we're fans of Putin and leading the Putin chant. And I think maybe he was just trying to be funny, tongue in cheek, get some laughs, but then saying that, hey, this is being compared to Hitler. That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like, okay, that's bad. Like we don't say those types of things out loud because they're actually hurtful.
We asked Kent, what would he say to voters who are concerned about his campaign's connection to people with these beliefs?
It's nonsense. I have no connection to any of these people. Like if you're a white nationalist or if you're a white supremacist, I have no time for you whatsoever. These people actively worked against me.
Kent criticized articles connecting his campaign to other people with extremist views, whether they previously consulted with his campaign, took photos with him, or interviewed him.
The reason why these guys are coming over and attempting to align themselves and force their horrible agenda on is because they see a gap within the Republican Party, I think. They see the fact that there's a revolution going on within the Republican Party right now, because there is. And my staff's not out there screening everybody's social media profile before they come in. I think that's the wrong way to do business. So yeah, I mean, there's people that have called me, that have taken a picture with me, that have bought a t-shirt and worn it, that have nothing to do with me.
Kent says energy independence is the key to reversing inflation. So he calls for reversing green or clean energy plans in favor of American oil expansion. He says he wants to increase American manufacturing and stop sending money and support to Ukraine as part of a foreign policy plan that puts American citizens first.
So how do we move the Republican caucus more towards the America first? So here's the good thing. Step one was beating Jamie Butler, and we did that because of you guys.
Evan's with me now. I know this is a fascinating race, one that's being watched across the country. And I also noticed in that report you didn't talk much about his personal background. Why leave that out?
So his wife was tragically killed, a service member as well, in a bombing in Syria in 2019. And that is well known about his story and his background, and also helped spark him to get into politics in this race. I did feel that he didn't talk too much about that when we sat down for an interview, and that has been well talked about in the last year and a half or so, plus is readily available elsewhere online where you can find the information. So I wanted to kind of narrow down and talk about the issues at hand and some of the beliefs and the political ties that he has.
Yeah, that makes sense. What was it like being in the room as he was doing his rally?
He has a lot of support there. People really are galvanized for him, are really coming around and supporting him in Clark County. But he did ask multiple times, which I thought was interesting, were any of you all Jamie Herrera Butler voters? As if to say, are any of you from that middle ground area here in the county that we're trying to attract votes from? No one answered affirmatively to that, but it speaks to this race where they're trying to find that middle, find that moderate, that political center, and attract those voters over.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. Thank you, Evan. Great stuff as always.
Got that.
Still to come on The Story. The fallout continues this week after a blistering report shows systemic sexual misconduct and emotional abuse in the National Women's Soccer League, including within the Portland Thorns. Calls for team owner Merritt Paulson to sell are deafening. Now coming from international soccer stars.
I don't think that Merritt Paulson is fit to be the man or the owner of that team.
We're highlighting a new report by the New York Times as it sums up the mess as it stands right now, when The Story returns. Now to a story that we know is worth your time concerning the evolving soccer scandal involving the Portland Thorns and the front office leadership. It comes from Kevin Draper at the New York Times. A case study for soccer success becomes the face of scandal. The Portland Thorns were once the pride of U.S. women's soccer, but after a report said the club shielded a disgraced coach and thwarted an abusive investigation, even the players are demanding a house cleaning. The article focuses a lot on former Thorns coach Paul Riley, who was featured in that scathing report conducted by the former Deputy U.S. Attorney General Sally Yates. The Times said of the report and Riley, altogether, the report painted a picture of a coach who crossed every line imaginable and whose conduct was reported to those in charge, and yet his contract was only terminated after his team missed the playoffs for the first time. The Thorns then actively assisted Riley with getting another job in the NWSL with the Western New York Flash. The Times says Yates' report issued a clarion call for dramatic change throughout women's soccer, from the pros all the way down to the youth league, within every organization that oversees the sport. And that call is loudest right here in Soccer City, where Draper writes that the Thorns seemingly embody both the best and the worst of women's soccer in the U.S. The best because the Thorns have been so successful, setting attendance records, featuring some of the world's best players, playoffs runs, and championships. The worst because of what the report found, that team leadership knew of former coach Paul Riley's disgusting behavior, swept it under the rug until they were forced to confront it, and then gave a glowing recommendation to another team who hired Riley, where he would coach for another 6 seasons. Not only that, but Thorns' leadership stood in the way of the Yates investigation. It reads, the Thorns refused to produce relevant documents for months, making specious arguments that the materials were protected. In addition, the Thorns declined to make Mike Golub, president of the club, available for an interview. The Thorns' lack of cooperation delayed our investigation. So, what has happened since the report was released on Monday? Growing calls for big-time change in the Thorns' leadership from the top down, that's for sure, and that begins with owner Merritt Paulson. The only thing he's doing is temporarily stepping away from Thorns' decision-making. And yesterday, he fired 2 Thorns executives, Mike Golub and Gavin Wilkinson, who have been involved in these scandals. Calls have never been louder, though, for Paulson to sell the team, and now those calls are coming from Thorns players and U.S. soccer stars themselves. Here's Thorns defender Becky Sauerbrunn.
You have failed in your stewardship. And it's my opinion that every owner and executive and U.S. soccer official who has repeatedly failed the players and failed to protect the players, who have hidden behind legalities and have not participated fully in these investigations, should be gone.
You just feel the anger coming out of that. Team USA soccer star Megan Rapinoe also chimed in this morning.
I think without accountability and without people, specifically who did the wrong thing being gone, that just says to us that nobody's really hearing us. So obviously the firings in Portland, we'll see what happens with the management, but I don't think that Merritt Paulson is fit to be the owner of that team. I don't think Arnhem is fit to be the owner of Chicago. And we need to see those people gone, so people who are fit and who will take care of the game, respect the game, and help the game grow in the best way possible can replace them, so we can continue to, not only have accountability and continue to bolster the policies and everything around the league, but help the league grow.
Sally Yates' report found sexual misconduct and emotional abuse were systemic in the National Women's Soccer League, and more bad news could be on the horizon. A joint investigation into abuse by the NWSL and its Players Association is expected to be completed and released in November, and Lord knows what's been found so far in that. Right now, that report is the only shield that Merritt Paulson has left. In his statement after Yates' report, Paulson said he promised the NWSL not to do any interviews or make any public statements related to the investigation until that report is released. Well, after that report is out, where will Paulson hide? Or will he sell? Will he get the hint? It all casts a very dark, dark cloud over Providence Park, where later this month, the Thorns will start their playoff push, hoping for a 3rd championship. And our coverage of this story doesn't stop here. How are youth soccer organizations in Oregon responding? The report found that systemic change was needed at every level of the sport. Okay, so what's being done? We have reaction from the leaders of several youth soccer groups. Back now to our coverage on youth soccer in the wake of that report that showed a culture of verbal abuse and blurred boundaries between coaches and players from the pros really on down. We wanted to find out what's happening in Portland and the conversations that are going on in the wake of this investigation. Daisy Caballero spoke with leaders of a few leagues, and they tell her they're not surprised by the findings, and they hope this marks the start of changes that need to be made even with young kids.
It's shocking to say that I wasn't shocked.
Portland youth soccer programs are speaking out in wake of the investigation into the sexual and emotional abuse allegations in the Women's National Soccer League.
Reading it, you're horrified. You know, you're disgusted.
The Portland Thorns are one of the teams at the center of the investigation released on Monday. Former Attorney General Sally Yates found that, quote, abuse in the National Women's Soccer League is rooted in a deeper culture in women's soccer, beginning in youth leagues.
As a parent, you know, I look at my daughter and I say, what's going to happen? How am I going to protect her from something like this happening in the future? It could happen as a youth.
Shannon Box won 3 Olympic gold medals and World Cup with Team USA. She now lives in Portland and is one of the co-founders of the all-women-ran Bridge City Soccer Academy. Box says having played soccer as a kid, collegiately and professionally, she's not surprised by the investigation findings, but hopes to be part of the change that needs to be made.
You know, this is somewhat why we started Bridge City Soccer.
You're trying to figure out the right way to speak to a 7-year-old about these things that they really don't understand.
Rochelle Hearns oversees the academy alongside Box and says they're trying to find ways to speak with their players about this difficult but necessary conversation.
So hopefully making them more aware of it now, but also creating safe environments, and then being a voice in the public, being a voice in our communities, and helping try to be part of the change.
I also checked in with the Oregon Youth Soccer Association, which oversees over 50,000 youth players in Oregon.
I'm happy that we've had this investigation because now it's come out in the open. It's not just multiple groups pressuring, it's something coming from USSF.
Steve Baker is the state president for the association, the largest single youth organization in the state. He says having adopted Safe Sport, a nonprofit organization created to protect young victims from sexual abuse at the federal level back in 2017, was something they take incredibly seriously.
It's designed to make sure that we are more cognitive of what's going on the field, off the field, with coaches and adults at all levels of the game.
All three tell me it's incredibly difficult to read the allegations made by two former Thorns players, Manaj Shim and Sinead Farley, against former coach Paul Riley. But they do thank them for their bravery in speaking their truth.
A year ago to the day, we had some amazing women who were strong enough and brave enough to speak about what happened to them. And this obviously would not have come to light without it. And that's the unfortunate piece. It shouldn't have had to come to a third-party investigation to have this come out.
Daisy Caballero, KGW News.
All right, keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We're going to finish up right after this. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching and being here with us. Remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow.
This is KG.